I had a bad feeling about my husband's best friend. Now I know why. He was the man of my dreams. He took me on date nights and made sure I was loved and gave me big gifts every so often, telling me I was the only one for him. I believed this since we have been together for 4 years now, and I've never had any issues until he introduced his best friend, who we will call Laura for privacy reasons. I remember we had an argument because he didn't tell me about her for our whole relationship, and he had been sneaking to see her and hang out with her at parties when I was sleeping, believing that he was working overtime. I was hurt by this, and my first thought immediately went to infidelity, but I found all of their texts to be platonic after he willingly told me to look. I thought she was nice at first, since when I first met her, she spoke to me politely and said how lucky I was for about a week until there was a get-together and my husband invited me along because it was her mother's anniversary and her family loved my husband because they had known each other since they were kids. I was okay with this and quite excited, since I wanted to make more female friends and have girls' nights out to relieve my work stress, since my job is difficult and I make 6 figures. I should also mention my husband works in an office job that doesn't pay a lot, so I handle all of the house bills and chores while he is trying to get another job. I walked into the house with my husband and she ran to him happy and immediately wrapped her whole body around his arm and dragged him off to the garden. He didn't even come to get me or anything after being dragged away, so I went to the kitchen to ask for a drink, where I was greeted by Laura's mother. She is a lovely person. We generally had a nice talk about our own lives, and she made sure I felt welcome. The whole gathering was mainly nothing special, till it got to the dinner. I sat down next to my husband and Laura walked up to me and asked me to move. I asked why, since the only other spot available was next to her uncle and mother, and since it was about her mother, wouldn't she want to sit next to her? Laura replied to the question with, "'Cause I want to sit next to him." I turned to my husband, who just nodded and told me to move Oswell, saying that I was being childish and making a scene. At this point, I generally felt my blood boiling. I stood up and told my husband that I felt uncomfortable and that I need to go to the bathroom, and asked where it was. Laura told me, and I left the table doing breathing exercises, trying to calm down. I ended up messaging my brother from the bathroom, and he said I was being jealous and that I was overreacting, so I agreed and went back to the table to sit next to Laura's mother. The whole time they were laughing, and it seemed that everything he said was funny to her, and she kept rubbing his back, touching his arms and saying how strong he had gotten, and she would look at me smugly. The breaking point to all of this was when I put a bit of meat onto my plate and she said, "Are you really going to eat all of that?" And I froze in embarrassment, while my husband and her laughed. Her mother stood up for me, saying that was inappropriate and to treat guests with respect, but she ignored it. Laura is very pretty and slim and works out, so coming from her it hurt a lot. I stood up from my chair and walked out the front door and called my dad. I told him to pick me up and that I'll explain why in the car. When I got in the car, I broke down and told him everything. He said I was most likely overreacting, but the situation was very odd and that I'm welcome to stay with him for the time being. I thanked him and went back to our house. While I was getting comfortable, my phone flooded up with messages from my husband and Laura. I read the messages, and to my horror, my husband was saying I ruined the whole dinner and that he was going to stay there for the night. I then read what Laura said, saying I had ruined her night because of my pick-me behavior. After doing research on that word, it's only filled me up with more anger. My husband came home around 5 p.m. from Laura's, and I immediately said leaving me and staying at another woman's house was disgusting, and he started shouting that I'm overreacting again and that I need to go counseling for my jealousy issues. For about a month everything was going okay again, apart from that my husband got more distant and cold, and I could feel that our argument wedged a gap in our marriage. Until I got a message from Laura this morning with a positive pregnancy result and a threat saying we should get divorced cause it's my husband's. I don't know what to do, and I'm just venting cause I feel awful and I feel like I failed as a wife. I don't know if I should confront my husband, and I'm thinking about it.